Old World is a game that was announced out of nowhere in the middle of April with an early access release date on May 5th, just 3 weeks post-announcement. In development by Mohawk Games, who created the very well-received Off-World trading company back in 2016, this 4X strategy game is quickly being touted as a marriage between Civilization with its empire building and Crusader Kings 2 with its character development. Half of that union makes a lot more sense once you know that Mohawk CEO Soren Johnson was the designer for Civilization 3 and lead designer on Civilization 4. The real question is this game worth your time, or does it seem like just a reskin of Civ with some added mechanics? Let's find out. Before we do though, in full disclosure, I did receive a code for Old World by Mohawk Games, for which I am grateful for, but it will not have an effect on the review you're about to watch. For a bit more of a detailed intro into Old World, I suggest watching my introduction to the game. The video is up in the top right corner. But at its core, Old World is a 4X strategy game where you not only seek to expand your empire through founding cities, constructing buildings, and conquering other nations, but also manage the affairs of you and your family, where events and decisions shape your character's development with traits both good and bad. Ultimately, you are trying to set up a family dynasty that will last through the entirety of the game, building on top of the legitimacy of your predecessors. There are currently 7 civilizations, and leading them are leaders you don't typically see in strategy games, like Romulus for Rome, Philip for Greece, or Hatshepsut for Egypt, adding a nice bit of flavor change to the standard. Each civilization starts with their own techs, unique units, and faction benefits, as well as faction families. Each of your cities will need to be founded by these families, and each of these families has their own opinion of you that will be influenced by the events and decisions mentioned earlier. On the surface, Old World really does seem like a Civ reskin, which has its appeal, but can also be a big turnoff. If you watch or play more than 5 minutes, you'll start to see that there are quite a few big differences in how Old World operates. Orders are its biggest, where you have a limited number of actions for your turn, meaning in the early game you won't be able to do every single thing that you want to. While it seems like a mechanic only designed to hold back the player, it prevents you from exploiting this one key mechanic. Units and workers can force march for a penalty, and that force march can move them as far as they can as long as you have orders. This is incredibly handy if you need to get units to defend a city across the map. It'll cost you a lot of orders, but it's worth it in a pinch. If you had unlimited orders, that handy mechanic would get abused to heck, and that's no bueno. Resources are another big step away. You have several resource types that you'll gain primarily from tile improvements. Split into 2 categories, material and immaterial. Material resources stockpile as long as you're in the positive production, and every building, worker, or unit you create will use one or more of these resources to produce. Immaterial resources like science and civics will progress your empire technologically or through the passage of laws. It seems like a lot to handle, and I was a bit overwhelmed at first, but I quickly got the ropes down and was able to prioritize my resource generation fairly quickly after that. The character management side of Old World may be one of the most foreign if you haven't played Crusader Kings 2, but do not get discouraged. The events for your characters are very easily laid out in front of you, and it allows you to roleplay a decent bit, which is always a nice flair to any strategy game. These events will build characteristics and traits for all family members, and you will be managing all family members. What I enjoyed the best about this character system is that there is no right or wrong way to shape your family members. It's entirely up to your playstyle. All of your children will go through some sort of tutoring, and you can train them into whatever field you think you will need them for the future. If you want your son or daughter to be a military leader, point them towards decisions that favor tactics. Want to boost your technology generation? Get them into science. And as your characters grow, they'll naturally be best suited for various roles in your empire, from governors and generals, ambassadors to spies, and fully immersing them into an experienced related role will only help your dynasty when you die and pass off the crown. These are by far the most obvious differences in the game, though there are more, and it does separate itself from the norm of strategy games. I haven't seen an interview or any news around how long Mohawk Games has been working on Old World, so I cannot give a base for development time. I can say that with only 3 weeks from announcement to early access release, it does seem a bit rushed, and there are definitely areas that Old World doesn't shine the brightest. If you've watched reviews on this channel before, you'll know that user interface design is a pretty huge make or break for me. If I personally can't navigate your UI easily as an experienced strategy player, that doesn't bode well for the game if you have completely new players. UI design is a bit of a mess in Old World, and it is by far the least favorable aspect of this game. Just by scrolling through a few menus and even on the main map itself, I see 3 or 4 different fonts that don't really seem to complement each other, a mix of all caps and no caps at all, and somewhere around 6+ font sizes, ranging from pretty dang tiny to nice and large. There are at any given time upwards of 30 buttons on the main map to click on, and in some places an overabundance of information or absolutely none at all. There doesn't seem to be a consistency in the design, and as a designer myself, it drives me just a little bit mad. I see it as a pretty easy fix, and I have heard that they are going to work on it, but if things like this bug you as much as it does myself, Old World will drive you a little bit crazy. Moving on to the campaign map, a lot of buildings are missing textures, units are either missing animations or haven't had their 3D models implemented yet, giving off some Civilization 2 vibes with their flat unit cards on the map. This is another one of the reasons I think production may have been rushed to get early access release. This isn't as big of a deal as the UI, and I fully expect Mohawk Games to start filling that in as quickly as possible, but I thought I would still bring it up for this section of the review. And a last aspect that left me wanting was diplomacy. While I think it is a great mechanic to need an ambassador to negotiate anything between empires, there are basically 3 options to choose from when it comes to diplomacy: war, peace, or trade. I'm putting this in my early access woes in the hopes that this is just part of early access and that we will indeed see some more depth in diplomacy for the game. Now to the moment of truth. Should you purchase this early access game or not? The answer is pretty much the same for all early access games in that it's not so simple. There are a lot of positives with Old World. New mechanics add a depth to both sides to make it a bit more unique among the strategy games currently out there. The game itself has some great design choices overall. The campaign map looks fantastic. The buildings that are textured are very, very well done, and with some UI standardization, the game will look and feel very complete. The character management side is also extremely appealing. I enjoy that every decision I make has a larger effect, just not in my empire, but how other characters, my own family, my factions' families, religions, and even other empire leaders feel towards me. It creates an impact that Civilization just does not have, but I think always needed. On the flip side of that, you are committing $40 to what is essentially an incomplete game. I have yet to see a roadmap for development, so I cannot even say what's coming with further updates. As with any early access game, it's a bit of a gamble as to whether or not you'll get what you define as your money's worth. All that being said, knowing Mohawk Games' reputation with Off-World Trading Company and Soren Johnson's extended background in the strategy genre, had I not received a key to this game before release, I personally would have ordered it. I am a big fan of supporting smaller developers, and from the time I played across 3 of the 7 empires, this game has already got some decent replayability, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they come up with as development continues through early access. That's all for this review on Old World. If you have decided on buying the game, support this channel directly by clicking on the link in the comment section or in the description. Your purchase through that link on any game in the Epic Store will allow me to get a little chunk of commission, and it would be very appreciated, but obviously never ever required. If you enjoy this review, be sure to subscribe to the channel and stay tuned as I work on more guides going over the mechanics of the game. Thanks for watching, this is Havoc, and I'll see you all next time.